structure, is that a typical size requirement for like a home?
That one's a little bit bigger. I'd have to sit here and actually try to count panels. We did that one a number of years back. I like it because it's a very Kansas photo, so I'm always pulling this one out. Nice outbuilding. That's a little bit bigger than most homes need. You know, that's probably in the 12 kilowatt range or so. Not untypical, you know, for kind of what we install. We install little, you know, systems that are 3 kilowatts also, and I mean I've got a number of customers who 3 kilowatts will power 100% of their needs, and I've got other folks who need, you know, they might need 20 kilowatts to do it if it's an all-electric home and that kind of thing, and they're trying to power their heat and such also. And people are very different in their energy consumption habits. The same house with 2 different owners, same equipment, can use twice as much power. It's very different, and that's just personal habits. Where do you set the thermostat? Do you turn the lights on or off? You know, what kind of a TV have you installed, and all of that. So it's difficult. A lot of times people say, to me, they go, I've got a 2,000 square foot house. How many panels do I need? You know, and well, that's what we look at the bills and we have to calculate that all out. Anyway, we had a problem because of this upfront cost being a barrier. Now, you know, again, $20,000 to $40,000. Well, you get 30% of that back on your taxes. That's a credit and not a deduction. So that's you know, that's just like money. But that's still a barrier, and so we've developed a solar lease to help with that. A lease is actually the #1 way of installing solar in the United States these days for residential folks. Companies like SolarCity. SolarCity is the largest solar installer in the world. They really pioneered this method. And so what they do, and what is, they essentially buy the panels, they buy the system, and they take advantage of the tax credits and the rebates and whatever else might exist, and they just lease it to the homeowner for a certain amount each month. And ideally, that amount that they're leasing it for is less than their energy savings. And we didn't have anything like that here because those leasing companies, like SolarCity, they work in states that have big rebates. So they work in like California, and those, you know, California's average electric rate is about 30% higher than ours. We've had fairly low rates in the Midwest because we haven't had to replace our power plants here as quickly as they have on the coast. We're starting to see more and more maintenance. You know, every year these plants are just getting a little more old, and they just need a little bit more updating. Like a car, and you get to that point where it's like, you know, is it worth putting another, you know, couple $1,000 in this car? Well, we're at that with our, not just the plants, but the distribution system itself. That's all had to be done kind of on the coast, and that's why they're paying, you know, 30% or more than ours. The price of power in Hawaii, you know, for instance, is, you know, it's like 3 times what we pay here because, well, they're in Hawaii. So we didn't have a lease option here because we don't have this big state rebate that somebody like SolarCity or some company like that can take advantage of. We actually got together with a Mid-America Bank, which is a bank based in Baldwin. They have a branch here in Lawrence and one in Wellsville. We actually installed solar on all 3 of their locations a few years back. And they're very interested in solar. Love solar. There's a great video on our website of Dave Hill, Mid-American Bank, explaining why he went solar. And we got together and talked about this leasing, and it ended up taking us a little over a year and a half to develop this. But it's a very unique leasing system because we don't have this big rebate. The bank had to really tighten their belts as far as what was an acceptable profit to make, and they treat these tax deductions and these tax credits as real money, which somebody like SolarCity does not. And that's super critical. Remember when I was talking before about how a residential person, they are eligible to get a 30% tax credit, while a business gets something like 70% tax credit. Well, that's why it actually makes sense to lease, because you can't take advantage of everything the bank can. And the bank uses that when they're calculating in the lease payments and things like this. So from a homeowner's point of view, a leased system amounts to a no money down, about 1.5% loan on their money. And from the bank's point of view, because they get the incentives that you can't get, it works out to them that they're making about 6% on their money and they're happy. They've also found a tremendous number of our solar customers change their bank accounts to go over and to them, and they may refinance their house and such because they like the fact that the bank shares some value that they have, and it's a small bank and we're easy to work with and that kind of thing.
So let me just clarify. So are you saying that most typical homeowner installed lease programs would cost the homeowner about the same or a little less than what they now pay for their electric energy costs over a year?
Correct. Yeah. The lease payments, a typical example would be that. Actually, I've got a couple of typical ones coming up, but let's just say that you're saving $100 a month on your electric bill. Your lease payment, it depends on how those panels are and if they're shade and which direction we're facing them and such. But if it's a good south-facing roof that's pretty sunny, then you're saving $100 a month on your electric bill. Your lease is about $80, so you're actually saving up to like $20 a month on it.
Really?
If it's facing east or west, where there's a little bit of shade and such, it's about the same. We don't see them, they often go over, or if they do, it's like $20 a year or something like that, your extra that you get. So it's essentially the same price as what you're already paying for conventional power. So again, the lease, we do a lot of residential leases. We don't do a lot of commercial leases because businesses can take advantage of this tax credit, and so from their point of view, they can often buy their money elsewhere, get their money from somewhere else, and it works just fine because they're able to take advantage of all those the depreciation savings. But residential systems, we see about 3/4 of our customers that we give them both options. It doesn't matter to us from my point of view. Either the bank's buying a system from me or a homeowner's buying a system from me. I'm happy because we get to put solar panels on somebody's roof, and it just doesn't matter. About 1 out of every 4 people decide, hey, I'm going to buy it. I just want to buy it. I don't want to mess with the lease, and that's fine. We're happy to do that too. And that's actually very much, those statistics are almost identical to what they are nationwide. It's just, when I looked into it, in those areas that have a lease, 3/4 of customers will prefer the lease. So there you go.
And so with lease, there's no upfront or installation costs?
There's no upfront costs, no installation costs, no maintenance costs. Yeah.
Why wouldn't people be flocking that?
We've done quite a few, yeah. We've done around 50 now in Douglas County. And so that's actually a pretty phenomenal number in the last 2 years. It's like 25 a year. We were doing about 2 a year before, and now we're doing about 25 a year. So, and part of it's our focus. And
are there any negatives associated with lease?
with the lease, it's a 15-year lease. So are you going to be in your house for 15 years? And there are ways you can sell that lease to someone else. Say, you're selling the house, a new buyer can take over that lease. So if you've got, 7 years left on the lease when you sell the house, someone can take it over and they'll exactly where you left off. Or you can always just buy it out. You can buy out that lease. And that's so that there is that. Really, it's similar to installing it, buying it on your roof. We want to make sure that you're probably going to be in that house for a few years too. So it's a very similar argument.
What about maintenance, yearly upkeep?
There's almost no maintenance on solar at all. Actually, there is no routine maintenance. We used to install, years ago, a lot of solar hot water systems that's got antifreeze in the system, and just like your car, you have to flush that antifreeze out. It's got moving parts, those pumps are sitting there moving. Solar has no moving parts. It's just you know, electrons going through wires, and that's it.
What about hail?
Hail is a good, yeah, you're hitting all of the high points. These are questions we get all the time. Damage from hail is covered by your homeowner's insurance, first off. Secondly, it takes, you can imagine, I mean, the material is very much like your windshield of your car. It's tempered glass. And so there's a lot of hail, you know, and you come out and your car looks like it was just, you know, dented all to heck, but your windshield's not smashed.
Right.
If it's so big that it will smash the windshield of your car, it's going to damage the solar panels. We've had panels go through tornadoes and all kinds of things, and the only, you know, we had a couple panels damaged in this Dahlia tornado when a 2x4 went halfway through them. That's kind of brutal. But the neighbors' roofs were actually pulled off, and this one wasn't. So they actually credit the solar with holding that roof down, because we actually tightened it in, you know, the whole thing. I come from an engineering background, and yeah, we were very careful with how we install our systems. And but yeah, you know, it will take, they're warranted to take a golf ball sized hail going 100 miles an hour. And that's actually very difficult to achieve because of do the math on the friction as it comes down. It takes a little bit of that velocity out, but a really high wind blowing it, it's possible that it could be damaged, but it is covered by homeowners.
How long does it take to put a system into a home?
The actual, well, you know, from hey, I'd like to put solar on my house, and here's a check. A lot of times that process involves, you know, some sort of governing body like the city or the county or something like that. It also involves the utility. We have to get permission from the utility, and so because we're interconnecting with them.
Oh.
And so we have to submit plans to them. Every year it's more and more and more and more and more paperwork for it. And it sort of depends. The time it takes actually depends on where we are. Westar is actually not too bad. KCPL is a little tough to work with. And then some smaller co-ops and such sometimes can take quite a while because they're just figuring it out. We're trying to help them figure it out. We actually write a lot of rules and send them to these different places all over Kansas. There are almost 120 utilities in the state of Kansas. I mean, we all know, okay, there's Westar, KCPL, but Baldwin City has their own. Eudora has their own. Ottawa. There's Caw Valley Electric. There's, you know, all of these little co-ops. There's all these cities. It's 120. So we actually deal with rules for all of these people. And so one of the things we like is when we get somebody like in Norton, Kansas, who decides that they want solar. And so then we go to the city council there and we say, we want to do this. And here are the rules, and we get it approved. And things like that can actually take a little bit of time. But to answer your question, I guess sometime in the, I like to say 3 to 6 months, it sometimes can take that long. The utility has months to get we send them the stuff. They can take a month to send it back and tell us that we need, move it half an inch to the left or something like that. This process can take time. When we're actually installing on a house, if the weather's good, it may only take us around a week to 2 weeks, something like that. Not a whole long time. Yeah. Go ahead.
On the homeowners insurance, once they know that you're putting this system in, are they going to charge you more for your insurance?
Homeowners insurance actually probably 99% of the time will not charge you more for that, which is a little bit surprising. They just add it on to the policy. The times that I've seen it actually increase have often been because now the insurance guy is looking at the house and saying, wait a minute, your house isn't worth $100,000 anymore. When you bought this, started this policy 15 years ago, you really need to up your coverage and that kind of thing. We see that more often affecting it, but not really so much with solar. When it does, we have a list of companies that we often encourage people to check out instead, so it works out pretty well. Yeah.
if you buy a system, how long before it'll need upgrading to maybe a better system? And would the lease people pay for that, or does the homeowner have to pay for it?
As far as upgrading, you know, we do see like the panels get a little bit more efficient, you know, each year. That kind of thing. There's not a lot. We wouldn't actually change those panels out and upgrade it, but what would happen is you install 5 kilowatts on your roof, and maybe in 5 years, if we took all those panels off and put new panels on, you could get 6 kilowatts on your roof instead of 5. Well, but the panels will still be producing power, and so normally, you know, I haven't had a customer in 15 years want to take panels back and change them out for newer, more efficient panels. Normally we add more panels, maybe if they have a little extra need.
So they last a long time.
They last a very long time. The warranty is somewhere around 25 years
Whoa.
on the panels. But panels, no moving parts, there's nothing really to break on them. So the expected life on them is around 40 years. And you know, we just don't, you know, we don't see a lot of problems. Almost never do we ever see any problems at all. It's kind of nice. Solar hot water, we were chasing those systems for many years because things happened. But air bubbles and things like that got into the system and caused havoc. But with photovoltaics, it's just it's like the wiring of your house. There's very little to go wrong as long as a mouse doesn't chew through something. You know, that's surprisingly few cases of that. One system we just was 10 years old, and you know, a squirrel got into it. Had an unpleasant surprise. Poor squirrel. Unfortunately, it was daylight. Go ahead. Thank you. I talked a little bit about the lease already. Again, we like that zero down, zero installation, zero maintenance, zero out of pocket, that kind of thing. Go ahead. An example here of a system. This is just outside of Lawrence. One of the owners of Mother Earth News magazine, actually. But this one is $22,000 if they bought it, but they actually leased it. They're saving around $10 a month. They're getting their energy $10 cheaper than they were already paying for it. And in the end of 15 years, actually, then they'll own the system. You know, that's a little bit more clear.
What would be, on that one, what would be the area of the panels?
The
area.
Oh, how many, like square feet?
Yeah.
You know, that would be around 600 square feet, probably 500 square feet, something like that.
If their roof needs leaks and needs to be replaced, is that a big hassle?
Roof leaks and such, yes. We want to make sure, we always make sure that the roof is good underneath the panels before we install the panels. That's important. A lot of times we'll tell people to get a new roof. We actually inspect the roof before we do any work. Now, that being said, the panels actually, the area under the panels is shielded from sunlight, which does the most damage of anything to your roof. And small amounts of hail, that kind of thing will be, that's all protected. The panels sit just off. There's a little bit of airspace underneath them, and so it actually cools that roof too. So it's the other thing is the roof shingles in the summertime get, they can be 130 degrees or more. If you've ever worked on a roof, believe me, you have to watch where you put your hand down or something like that. It'll burn the heck out of you. So the panels will protect the roof that they're sitting on top of. Sometimes a roof will need to be re-shingled, and they'll shingle up to it. So the typical residential system that we do is composition shingle roof, like most of us have. We've done, tile roofs and wood-shaped shingles and that sort of thing, but most of us have composition shingle roofs, and we just actually roof right up to them. If it had to be re-roofed, you don't pull the panels off and redo it. We've never had to do that in 15 years, and it would be extremely unlikely to do that. But if you did have to, for some reason, we would pull the panels. We have to pull the panels off to do it. Yes?
I live in a small little cottage, but outside, just along the line of the house, there's a line of very, very old, very large trees, and so it's completely in shade all the time. And I just assumed there wasn't any way to have it solar in that kind of situation.
And shade is we have to have sun on the roof in order to have solar. That was a question. And so, I mean, occasionally I had a client in Topeka, and we had to, they had a big property. They had probably 50 trees on it. They had several acres out there, and we were able to remove like 2 trees, and they got the solar that they needed. So sometimes we have to look at that. But obviously, if you've got a really nice tree, the tree stays, and you're probably not going to go solar on that one.
But you can't put a system out in the yard.
We could. A ground-mounted system is something that we do. It costs a little bit more. For the typical, like in town, there's usually not enough. There's with some exceptions, but a lot of times there's not enough area that's sunny out in the yard to do it. In the country, we do that quite a bit. Sometimes we have that room, and we go ahead and put that on, or we use an outbuilding or something like that in the country too.
Is there an advantage to using like a barn or an outbuilding?
The advantage, on a barn or an outbuilding would be that there's often a nice big roof area, and
South-facing?
and it could be south-facing, and the pitch is usually nice for us, and sometimes people don't like them on their house, and so there's always that too. So although aesthetically, there are ways of making it a little bit less intrusive. We use black frames and that kind of thing. We're starting to use those more and more instead of the raw kind of aluminum, which gives you a grid type appearance. We use a black panel that minimizes that grid and helps to blend into the roof. This is actually an example of how we start designing. This is a Google Earth image, so we pull up a house, and we never used to be able to do this, and that's probably why I think it's so cool. But there's an angle on the roof, and so you can't just drop a rectangle on that. You have to size it accordingly. You have to put it in the plane and like move it down. But we actually size systems using the satellite image and are about 95% accurate as far as what that roof will hold. Occasionally we'll get out and do a field measurement and realize we were off a little bit, and we can't get those panels. But we are amazingly accurate. Obviously, we go out and when it's time and measure everything out first. But to get an estimate going, it is incredibly accurate. So again, I think that's pretty amazing. We go through and do an analysis. Actually, I just randomly grabbed a couple of these. This one does 101% of their power, but it's a little bit off. So the blue line here is the solar that's produced. The other line is the conventional electricity usage. So we month by month, we know what these systems are going to produce. We are incredibly accurate with that. And we have 15 years of tweaking our